Way back in the dark and distant past of 2018, I started this channel with a playthrough of Kingdom Come Deliverance. A game I hated so much in the beginning, I would have given up after the first 3 hours, if not for the fact that I had no other new games to play and had just spent the only money left in my bank account to buy this one. Fortunately, I came to love the game so much by the end that telling people how great the game actually was changed the course of my YouTube career and subsequently my life. So it is with the most profound pleasure that I can finally announce, after 6 years, that Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 is well and truly on its way to completion and is due to release before the end of 2024.
Do you take me for a fucking fool?
No, you're not being trolled. The days of Warhorse announcements consisting of bars of soap are over. This is the real thing.
Sweet Jesus, I knew this day would come!
I was one of the YouTubers lucky enough to get a brief glimpse of KCD2 early, and I'll share what we know about it with you in just a moment, followed at the end of the video by the full, uninterrupted Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 trailer. But first, let me turn on the lights. Don't go away. Welcome to Night's Arcade. I am Sleepless Night, and today I am finally allowed to tell you what I know about Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, which, by the time this video goes live, should have been officially announced just a few minutes ago by the man sitting on this horse.
It's been a while, but now we can finally show you Kingdom Come Deliverance 2.
It has been a lot of fun watching people lose their minds worrying about the modern clothing this horseman was wearing in the image Warhorse chose to tease this reveal. But now we can talk about the things we do know, things that we think we know, and things that we can only speculate about, like, "Holy shit, please don't tell me that his hands keep on lying dead on the ground there." The specific year in which this new game is set has not yet been revealed, unless it was mentioned in the last few minutes, in which case I now look like a complete tit. But we obviously know the game begins at some point following the end of the last game, and we last saw Henry and Hans riding off into the sunset together towards Trotsky Castle with a letter from Margrave Jobst. And since Trotsky Castle and the utterly gorgeous landscape which surrounds it feature so heavily in the trailer and the artwork shown, it seems likely that while we have aged 6 years waiting for them to get there, they have probably not been on the road more than a couple of weeks. Henry seems a little heavier, despite weeks on the road, but perhaps he's just been taking his new life as a freshly minted nobleman a little too seriously. And while a few days or weeks later en route to Trotsky Castle seems as though it might be the jumping-off point for this long-awaited sequel, I have to pause and give credit to Sexy Biscuit here, because following the press event, Roxy pointed out a tiny detail to me that I had missed during the orchestra footage in St. Barbara's Church. And although this is pure speculation, that tiny split-second detail sent me down a rabbit hole of research and re-watching other bits of the footage, which got me wondering if there's a possibility that Warhorse has a major surprise up their sleeves regarding KCD2's time frame.
That's no concern of yours.
Let me explain. This game is not only roughly twice the size of the original, but it apparently takes place across 2 different maps instead of the single map we had in Kingdom Come Deliverance. One of these maps is the aforementioned Trotsky Castle and the Bohemian Paradise, yes, that's a real place within the Czech Republic, with its stunning landscape of forests, valleys and striking rock formations that surround it, all dotted here and there with other castles and settlements. The second map centres around the wealthy silver mining city of Kuttenberg, with its monastery and the very recognisable Gothic structure of St. Barbara's Church, which was far from complete at any point in what would have been Henry's lifetime, so it is possible we'll see a lot of construction there, as we did with Sasau Monastery in the first game. And the devs are keen to stress that this will be a slight departure from the muddy, dark little towns and cities we've seen previously in Kingdom Come Deliverance. Kuttenberg was a very prosperous city before the Hussite Wars, and this all makes me wonder if the transition between the Bohemian Paradise map and the Kuttenberg map will also represent some sort of major leap forward in time.
First, I'd like to see the world, meet new people.
Again, that is pure speculation on my part, but it would be an interesting way to tackle the often raised sequel point of, did my character just forget everything he learned in the last game, or what?
That's not entirely in my field of expertise.
The dev's explanation seems to be that Henry is still a young man, not constrained by set character traits, and hasn't yet become who he is ultimately destined to be. So presumably that translates into... Yeah, he's forgotten pretty much everything.
What have I forgotten?
Where the fuck am I?
What the fuck was it?
Kuttenberg was the site of several major incidents, not only during the Hussite Wars, but in the decades leading up to them. But any one of those would require some sort of leap forward or backward in time from the point where we last saw Henry and Hans at the end of the last game. Kingdom Come Deliverance depicted several real historical events, and although Warhorse don't tend to break from history too much, they have had a tendency to bend it a little from time to time in order to make it fit their narrative. One example of this is the elusive father-murdering bad guy Marquardt von Aulitz from the first game, who, in historical reality, was killed by an arrow during a siege in 1402. So he wouldn't have been around to scowl menacingly at Henry from across the burning remains of Skalitz almost a year later. What's more interesting than that, though, is that the city siege, in which von Aulitz was fatally struck by that arrow, was that of the city of Kuttenberg. So maybe they'll bend history a little backward for the sake of Henry's tortured soul, who knows? It would be interesting, but again, I stress, this is pure speculation. Now, we've been speculating about this game for 6 years, so now that it's been announced, let's leave speculation behind for a while and get back to a few things we now know for sure about this game. We know that the realism of the combat is as important to the developers now as it was back when they conceived the first Kingdom Come Deliverance. Something I absolutely loved about the first game was that holding your own in combat required actual practice and lots of training. And the sense of achievement that gave me when facing off successfully against 3 or even 5 bandits when I couldn't even cut down a cane at the beginning of the game, I have never felt to that degree in any other game, either before or since. But this time, we also have more projectile weapons than simply a bow. We've seen a crossbow, and even the most rudimentary of firearms, often referred to simply as a hand cannon, because some of the earliest firearms were precisely that, a mini cannon on a stick. So good luck with that. I personally never cared much for crossbows in any game, but I know many gamers who will be overjoyed to see their arsenal of weaponry increase. Farkle is back, which will please Roxy no end. Blacksmithing is back, so you have to maintain and sharpen and de-rust those weapons yourself. I have confirmed with one of the Warhorse team that fast travelling will still take the form of a mini Henry figure moving around the map, so viewers of my first KCD playthrough will be relieved to hear that Hopeless the Adventurer will still get to do this. Alchemy is back. No word yet as to whether Saviour Schnapps will make a return, but it certainly won't be the most popular move if that's the case. I personally never really found it to be a problem after the first couple of hours, but I have literally hundreds of comments on my previous videos to indicate that many people were not so impressed with it, and they are not afraid to stretch their vocabulary of expletives in saying so.
Kurva! Fuck!
Well, quite. We can see and hear from the trailer that sword-stealing asshole Istvan Toth will be returning.
Not that bastard.
The same!
And there is a scene in there in which Henry seems to be reunited with the sword he helped craft. How permanent this reunion will be remains to be seen, but I can't imagine he just found it lying around in the discarded underwear of a bathhouse patron, so we can expect at least one great duel, if not several, during the course of the story. And speaking of finding things lying around, as you do in these games, there are a lot of indications from the devs that your actions in the world of KCD 2 will have a much bigger impact on it than in the previous game. So if you absolutely insist on decapitating innocent tavern customers just so that you can steal their shirts without having to undo the buttons, for God's sake don't do it while drunk or naked, because apparently people don't like that very much in this game and will happily tell you so with little to no regard for their own breathing privileges.
Keep your mouth shut. Don't take this personally.
Wait!
Most of my regular viewers will know by now that sound design and music are always high on my list of important aspects when it comes to video games. Never more so than when that game has a sprawling, epic story, as this game is sure to. So I'm overjoyed to report that Jan Walter will once again compose the score. The music of Jan Walter and Adam Sporker from the first game contributed greatly to the grand, heroic feeling, particularly of those really important story beats, like turning away Sigismund's army at the gates of Talmberg.
My lord, you have my utmost admiration.
Get on with you, Robard.
Or the preparations for the battle at Brannick.
Any of these fuckers foolish enough to stick his head outside the stockade is to lose it at once. Understood? Yes, sir! Glad to hear it. Now, let's do it! Forward!
One thing I'm really excited to hear is that this game will focus much more on the evolving friendship between Henry and Hans, which would seem to give the lie to my earlier fears that Hans had been killed before the game even really got started. Sorry about that. Maybe it was a false alarm.
You bastard.
Those who remember my original KCD review will remember how brilliantly I felt that the friendship between those two was handled, and how I just wished there'd been more moments with the colourful Sir Hans Capon. Two well-written characters, expertly brought to life by Tom McKay and Luke Dale, the latter of which calls Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 a behemoth of a game in comparison to the first. Which brings me to my final point. The scale of this game has been referred to repeatedly. Dan Vavre talks about this being the kind of game they wanted to make in the beginning, but they didn't have enough resources or experience. This game has over 5 hours of cutscenes, in contrast to the roughly 3 hours of the original. Warhorse PR manager and occasional soap troll Toby has said that this is bigger and better, and that Warhorse are even more ambitious than they were the first time, which I must admit gives me slight cause for concern when put together with Dan Vavre's light-hearted comment that the city of Kuttenberg in this game is too big, in his opinion. I'm certain I will love the game no matter what, and this time I'll most likely be playing it on both Xbox Series X and PC, so I'm slightly less worried than I was with my old X-Brick from 2018. There are 250 people working on this game, in contrast to the much, much smaller team they had for the original, and Warhorse have nothing to prove to me or the many, many other fans they've garnered around the world. But I did say in my original KCD review that people will be a lot less forgiving of major issues this time around. And I stand by that statement.
No matter how good the plan is, something always gets fucked up.
Gamers seem to be a lot less forgiving in general than they were just 6 short years ago. In fact, that's one of the reasons I almost left Knights Arcade behind before Warhorse pulled me back in with this announcement. I just got tired of the state of constant rage that gamers seem to be in these days. I was an angry kid too once, but I'm old enough to have figured out that constant anger just makes you feel unhappy and stressed most of the time, and it just doesn't ever get you anywhere.
Shut the fuck up, you weasel, and keep it fucking shut! You don't even get a say!
But still, no matter what a game does, no matter how well it delivers, many gamers are just impossible to please and eager to tear down and diminish the years of hard work and creativity that go into any TV show or video game or film. I haven't checked out what people outside my own circle are saying about Baldur's Gate 3, mostly for the reasons I just gave, but I'm sure even a game as popular as that has its fair share of detractors.
Talk as if you've seen it happen.
A man my age has seen a lot.
Whatever the case, I, and most of the gamers that follow my channel, will be absolutely overcome with excitement at the opportunity to step back into the world that Warhorse have created. I'll be covering the game, and my plan at the moment is to create my first end-to-end Let's Play series in years when KCD2 releases. When that will be, we don't yet know down to a firm date, but Daniel Vavra has said they plan to release it by the end of this year.
How is it that we knew nothing about this before?
It's a wonder we can find out anything at all.
When it does release, it will release on PC and current generation Xbox and PlayStation consoles, so start putting those pennies into your Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 fund. That's it from me, but you can continue to follow developments here by subscribing and ringing that bell to be notified of new content. Or you can follow me on Patreon, Twitter, or join my lovely Discord community. All the links for these things can be found in the video description or in the links section at the top of the Knights Arcade channel page. I will share more KCD2 details with you as and when I get them, but until next time, from Knights Arcade, this is Sleepless Night, saying nighty-night.
Peggy 18.
I always dreamt of leaving this place. Becoming more than a peasant.
You know the trouble with an adventurous life? It can end before it gets started.
Congratulations, Sir Knight. You finally become a man.
Wake up! Pull yourself together, Henry.
Nobody will hand anything on a platter to men like you and me.
You still have a long way to go till your work is done.
O merciful God, be kind and protect us so we don't blow our arses off. Amen.